Oh, I was thinking you were saying you had to work because you're going to fix my tree.
Well, no, I got to do that too. But no, I got to go. Got to work.
I don't care about your other job. I just care about my tree.
Usually be easy, actually. It's not that bad.
No, it's not.
No.
No.
You just got to actually just dump some compost on it. And I got business cards now.
Oh, yay. Yeah, I looked at the maple as well, and there's a little notch. Mm-hmm. It's got a little nodule down there.
Yeah,
right.
That's probably the root flare. And you want that to be somewhat exposed. Because if you dig it out too deep, you'll rot that root flare. And the tree will rot out, so you don't want that.
Okay. So today on Storytelling on the Plains, we're learning about trees.
We're going to talk about trees. Well, is this Arbor Day? When's Arbor Day? Is it already passed? I should have known that. I should really know that.
You should really know that, really being a native Nebraskan.
Well, a native Nebraskan and a tree planter. Jeez, I really should, but I don't.
I don't know either.
I don't know. And that's going to bug me.
So as of the recording today, we're going to do part 2 on Idah McComsey, but it has been raining and super windy, way more windy than western Nebraska normally is. What, 10 days now?
Yeah.
I think it's rained almost every day for the last 10 days, which is unusual for this part of the...
Well, it would be if we had a winter, but we didn't have a winter, so no, this is just all backlogging. This is all just the weather's backlogging.
Mother Nature's like, hey, I got to catch up.
It's like, crap, I forgot Scottsbluff, Nebraska again. Better go back and get to them.
Oh, and I just had 2 new trees planted in my front yard.
Way after Arbor Day, April 24th.
Oh, yes, we missed it by a good margin. Because our old trees, whoever planted them 20-some years ago, didn't plant them right, and the roots were coming up, and the trees were tipping over, so it sucks because the trees were alive.
It's really bad, too, because I didn't want to tell you till after the podcast, but you already have another dead tree out front. That one out in your corner that your HOA did, that pine.
Oh, because they haven't done anything to it.
Yeah, that thing's deader than dead.
Yeah. They just planted it, and I don't think anybody's taking care of it. So
nope, that tree's gonzo.
Yep, which means the HOA gets to spend more money on another tree.
You should give them my card.
I will. There you go. Give me your card.
I'll make sure I don't mess it up.
And who our HOA board president is?
Your husband.
Yes. Yay! So maybe it'll get sorted.
Hey, a lot of people just think it's too easy. It's just a tree. Well, you spend $200-$300 on these trees.
Yeah.
You should really make sure you plant them right.
Yes.
And not just assume that, you just dig a hole, stick it in the ground, and walk away, and
And
I'm going to Johnny Appleseed this thing.
Yeah, I don't think anybody looks after it at all.
No, it doesn't look like it. And after a while, you have to really just baby them for the first 3 or 4 years. After that, they'll take care of themselves after that. But you have to baby them.
And I think it was last summer they redid that little area out front. So I will pass that along to Paul, because in June we have our yearly meeting, so he can bring it up then.
And by June you'll tell. You won't have to be like, oh, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Like, no, by July you'll know it's dead.
And I don't want my trees to die, because I picked out those ones, like the
pretty ones,
the Rocky Mountain maple. There were, I think, 5 of them there, and I was like, no, I want that one. So if I had to go get another one, I mean, yes, it's a pretty tree when it eventually becomes an adult, but as a little baby, that was the prettiest of the ones that were there. Yeah. So I don't want to have to get a new one. Although I'm pretty sure Idah McComsey never had to worry about picking out trees. Wait, no, she did have that tree. Her and her brother had that tree. Now it's escaping my brain because it's been 3 weeks since you and I sat down to do part 1. The tree claim.
Oh, that's right.
Where they had to plant. They could have a plot of land.
Trees to establish the properties.
Yeah. So I'm sure she had somebody looking after it, though. I'm sure she didn't go out.
And still somewhat holds true today. I mean, obviously, it doesn't establish anything anymore, because now properties are properties, right. But it increases trees increase property value.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the more trees you have, the higher you can charge if you want to sell.
And I can tell you, if our property was not on such a slant, I would probably have more trees, but we'll have that discussion later. We're going to put more plants in there.
That's right. Yep.
Paul told me, he said he doesn't care. He needs it mulched and more plants in there. And I said, okay, we'll get it sorted. So there you go. There's my plug for the Jolly Gardener. If y'all ever need trees planted and other plants. I was like, what do you call those other things?
If you want to plant plants.
Gosh.
Like plants.
So last time, in part 1, we learned about Idah McComsey and how she arrived in western Nebraska. And we learned that she liked the wide open spaces so much, she convinced her parents to move out here. She also explained how to build a soddy, which at the time was probably the most important structure in early pioneers' lives. I have failed at all of that with my family. I can't even get them to come out here for a vacation.
Really?
Yeah, they don't understand why I love it out here.
Come out and see the soddies, yo.
Yeah.
We got a few.
I mean, I'd put them up in my house or in a hotel. I wouldn't put them up in a soddy.
I'd put them out in Fort Robb.
Oh, yeah.
Like, make them really appreciate this place.
Yes. You want to know what it was really like? Yeah. We'll give you a step up from what it was really like. And even
those officer cabins are nice, though.
Yeah.
I mean, Fort Robinson, for anybody that goes there, it's not a 5-star resort, but for a place where you can hang out, it's much more comfortable than you think it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
Those officer cabins are really neat. I think they're cool.
And even back then, they were complaining during the summer about how hot it was and stuff. But they are nice buildings. Mm-hmm. And I read something, I don't know, a few months ago, that they're planning on reconstructing some of the other buildings that were lost.
Oh, that's cool.
Which is really neat. And we will get to Fort Robb, and when we get to it, you'll understand why it's taken so long, because it is. It's probably like a 10-part series, because
it's a huge fort with a big history.
Yeah. And everything needs its own episode. I would think just the Cheyenne Breakout.
Crazy Horse. I mean, there's so many things that happen there, and Fort Robinson is still going. I mean, it's still a part of our growing history.
Yeah.
I mean, there's still things that go on there.
Yep.
There in Fort Laramie, unlike like Fort Clark, for instance, which is out near Valentine, there's nothing there. There's not even a structure there.
Yeah.
There's just basically little stone outlines of.
You have to use
your imagination, and see what was there. But there's nothing but the foundation stones of Camp Clark anymore.
That's what's when you go to Fort Robb at the Red Cloud Agency, they have the area, they keep it mowed, and they have signs where each of the different buildings were, and a memorial's been erected there.
That would have been that would be cool to reconstruct. Reconstruct the Red Cloud Agency for historical reasons. I think that'd be cool.
I would even say, in addition to that, I would love to see the whole Red Cloud Agency reconstructed. The German POW camp was much bigger, but reconstruct one or two of the buildings so you can see what they were like. Because if you go up there,
you can only see the watchtowers or the watch pits or whatever you call it. Not much of a tower. It's just a little foundational thing where you can figure that was once a tower.
Yes. And it's huge, and so Fort Robb, the University, Game and Parks, and the Nebraska State Historical Society all own different bits of Fort Robb. Because short version is the government didn't need it anymore. They started trashing the buildings, and then I think it was the university that came first and was like, "Dude, don't do that." And then Game and Parks got involved, and the Historical Society, and between the three of them, they were able to save the remaining buildings. So that's why some of the things are separated up there, which might not make sense to other people, but the three agencies kind of work well together. But State Historical Society takes care of the mowing for the Red Cloud Agency and the German POW camp. So you can actually walk all around where the POW camp was, and they have it all mowed, so the path it's easy to see the paths where everything is. And I've done about half of it just because by the time I got to it the day I decided I wanted to do it, I just ran out of time. It was like 4:30, quarter of 5, and I was like, I should probably be heading back.
And it kind of goes down a hill.
Yes.
So you kind of have to go like down the hill and back up the hill.
Yeah.
And it's in a bizarre place of where the fort's located.
And they did that on purpose so that, But it's well worth going out there. But today we're back here in Scottsbluff County with Idah McComsey, and we're going to continue talking about her and her life experiences out here in early western Nebraska. So not long after Idah settled in Nebraska, she fell in love with a young man. One winter, and I couldn't find what this young man's name was. I'm sure it's out there. I just haven't been able to find out what it is. So one winter, this young man and his brother were transporting pigs to Cheyenne, Wyoming from Gearing. The easiest way to do that today would be just go over the Wildcat Hills and then, Highway 78, and you take the back road back over and it dumps out into northern Cheyenne. I don't know how the roads were crap, because the road between Kimball and Gearing today, from what I understand, I've talked to people in this town when it was a single lane road, and some of the older folks even remember it still being a dirt road, and in the winter you were just kind of cut off up here.
Well, and how did you transport pigs back then? Did you put them on wagons, or did you treat them like goats and sheep and cows and like actually herd them?
I don't know.
Herding pigs sounds awful.
Yeah,
I would like a nightmare.
I would assume
that really does. Imagine a bunch of pigs going down a dirt road in the middle of Nebraska. That sounds awful.
So they made it to Cheyenne successfully, but on their journey back to Gearing, they were caught in a blizzard. The brothers were found later frozen to death not far from Idah's home. And her family members noted that Idah never married due to this young man's death.
That's awful.
And it just kind of hit me that, they were found not far from Idah's home. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering if they got caught in the blizzard and they were like, Idah's house isn't too far away, we can get there and be safe. We don't know because they died, but...
Well, and some of those old traditions of Ireland and England they still hold true. There's a reason why people carried lamps around during foggy times, during those shorelines, why there's lighthouses and why there's things like that. There's so many stories in Ireland of people walking off cliffs. Mm-hmm. There's whole fairy tales of that happening, and just because you can't see. And here, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
You're not going to walk off a cliff, but you will freeze to death because you can't see anything.
Yeah. When I was still working at the Star Herald, there was a lady that passed away between Gearing and Kimball, and she did manage to call her husband on cell phone, and her son said he would come out. They knew she was on the highway there. It was a blizzard. I don't know why the lady decided to get out of her car. Mm-hmm. The son eventually gets to the car. Mom's not in the car. They found her the next day.
Yes, and I hope for anybody, and there's another story similar to that happened not too far from North Platte, I believe. Two couple who've never been to Nebraska before got there to partied on some hard drugs that made them a little freak out. Most people think it was meth, but got caught in the blizzard, got stuck. If they would have stayed in their cars, they would have survived. Mm. And that's the lesson that, by the way, I give to everybody here. If you're caught in a blizzard, stay in your car. And you will most likely survive, or more likely to survive, trapped in your car, even if it's up to the windshield, than you'll have walking out and trying to wander and find yourself around. Yep. You won't make it.
The second year I was here, a blizzard hit. I was working at Cedar Canyon Elementary School, which, for people that aren't familiar with it, it's a country school. Was a country school. Yeah, sorry, I keep forgetting it's closed now. The short version, the Gearing PD would not come to help because they said everything was fine in town. And eventually, when I got back to town, you went up on that curvy overpass.
Because it's in that valley.
Yeah. And everything was clear as could be. But
That's
down
crazy,
there, it was awful.
Yep, because you're in a, for those who do kind of know this area, Cedar Canyon is kind of tucked up, kind of in between the Wildcats and past the monument, going towards the Wildcats, going south.
Yeah.
And it's in a weird little valley.
Yeah.
So yeah, if the wind picks up just right, you're.
I was going to stay and help all the kids get out with all the other adults, and they were like, no, the young man that I worked with had muscular dystrophy, so his bus managed to get down there and take him. They were like, just go, follow the bus, go. Okay. I literally blinked, and I couldn't see the yellow bus anymore. And so I slowed really far down. I had to shift all the way back into first gear. And I'm terrified because my lights are on. I can't see anything. I can't even see the end of my car. And at the time, I had a 2000 Hyundai Accent. So y'all can go look that up and see how small it is. It was a 2-door. And on that road as well are ditches for farming, for the water. And I know at some point in time it goes back to flatter land. I did not know if we had passed that or not, and my car started to tip. So I'm like, am I at one of those ditches? I can't try to drive anymore. So I just put my 4-ways on, turned the car off, pulled the emergency brake up, and I'm like, I guess I'm stuck here. One of the parents came by, gave me her cell phone, and left.
Here's a cell phone. Good luck.
Yeah, and the battery was almost dead. I managed to make it to make a call to Paul to let him know, I guess I'm just staying here for the night. I am not getting out of my car. This is bad. I can't even see the road. I can't see that double yellow line on the road. I'm not going anywhere. He asked if I was okay. I always have snacks in the car, and an emergency blanket in the trunk, and I always have a bottle of water in the car. And I'm like, at least till this clears, I can ration all of that.
Yeah.
And it would at most be one day that I go hungry.
And usually it's very unusual for blizzards to last more than a day here.
Yeah.
They blow through pretty fast.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's why I say Nebraska anyway. I mean, I don't know if you can follow the same rules in Alaska, but in Nebraska, you don't get out of your car.
Yeah.
Even if you have a half a tank of gas left in your car and you left it idle, you'd be surprised how long you'll keep warm.
Mm-hmm. And so I just figured I'd turn my car on, get warm, turn it off. But I had the blanket.
Or do it in stages, like turn it on for a few hours, turn on for a few hours, turn it off. You can do it smart. You really can.
And I had the blanket, so I wasn't too worried about, freezing to death. I was relatively safe. Eventually, there was a police officer that worked in town, in Scotts Bluff. His name was Brian Wasson, and his daughters went to school there. Mm-hmm. He grabbed several Scotts Bluff police officers to go down and help everybody. And nice on the last batch out, one of the teachers said, we haven't heard from Irene yet. He went up and down. So he'd already been up and down the road a couple of times, taking people out and leading them back into safety. It took him 3 more tries looking for my car.
Because it's completely buried.
Yeah. And my car was blue, and he eventually found me, and I turned the 4-ways off, got out, and the next day I was literally, if you ever go down Carter Canyon Road, the very first house on the right, I was on the other side of the road, probably 200 feet past it toward the highway. So I was very close, and the reason my car had tipped was because in that area it's cornfields, and the road just naturally dips. Dip. But I didn't know where I was at. Because I was so focused on that yellow school bus, and when it disappeared, I was like, am I at the ditch or not? Mm-hmm. And it's best for me to just stay here. Someone will find me. And I was thinking, 1, I don't want to freeze to death. And 2, that's what I learned in Girl Scouts. Don't wander around. Stay where you're at. People will find you. Because people, they follow a pattern to find you. And if you keep moving, you're literally constantly resetting that pattern, and they're never going to find you.
Never will.
And I figured, the blizzard wasn't going to last forever, and I would be okay. Now you're talking late 1800s. These two boys they didn't have a choice. There was no place for them.
You couldn't hunker down. No.
Yeah.
And there was no advanced weather system. And if you're traveling all the way to Cheyenne, back to Gering, I guess my only question was the wisdom of the time of year they decided to do it.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I don't know when does it say what time?
No, just
what
that
month it was?
No, just that it was a blizzard. So
because I mean, blizzards could happen right now.
Yeah,
and they've been known to happen in May.
Yeah,
I mean, so I would say maybe it was a nice spring day when they headed out and they got caught, which is very common out here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look at our weather right now.
Yep. So all of those memories just kind of started coming back in when I read this.
Memories. We used to have the blizzards that I remember as a child are nothing like the blizzards today. You still get those kind of blizzards out in Harrison, actually, because I did get caught in a blizzard up in Harrison. That caught me. I had to stay in Harrison 2 days longer than I wanted to because everything was just shut down.
Yep.
There was no going anywhere.
Yeah.
Luckily, I was at my in-laws' house, so I had a nice warm place to stay, food, company.
Yep. Well, even just snowstorms back in New York are so different from what I grew up with. They're not even as bad or as big. But climate change is not real. So anyway, this is why Idah never got married. I guess this was the guy for her, and she just never got over him. And living out here, I can also understand that.
Well, that's just a horrible way to go too.
Yeah. And
like someone you care about's just outside your front door, and you yourself didn't even know.
Yeah.
That's pretty horrible.
Yeah. And I could see myself making that same decision. I don't want to be that kind of attached to someone after this. So while working on the homestead, Idah mentioned in her interview that rabbits were thick in this country and that they ate everything they tried to raise in the garden the first year they were here. Yeah, they are everywhere here too. They're so cute though. I mean,
they're tasty.
Oh, okay. We're not going there. They're just cute.
I already had this conversation with my sister. She brought a pet rabbit to Easter dinner. I'm like, that looks tasty. And she didn't stay very long. Like, you eat rabbits. You don't keep them as pets. You eat them. I'm a German man. We eat rabbits. It's just what you do. They're not your pets.
I'm theoretically German too, and
you need to eat more rabbit.
No, they were my pets growing up.
Nope, Hassenpfeffer. You need to get some of that Hassenpfeffer.
Okay.
It's good. It's good for you.
So Idah said, my sister and I decided to set a trap for them, killing two birds with one stone, as it were, doing away with them as a pest and also providing our larder with fresh meat.
See, they eat rabbit.
Oh, thanks a lot, Idah. We fixed up a box with a sort of lever on it and baited it with bacon rind. You can catch humans that way too. The bacon rind would disappear and the box be tipped over and no rabbit. Yeah, they're pretty smart. We could not fathom the mystery until we discovered our brother and Jim Smith, who later married another sister, were playing tricks on us. There were lots of range cattle running about then, and they would get into our crops and make short work of them. So their brother and Jim Smith were stealing the bacon. See, I said you could get humans with it too. Just need a bigger box. So my sister and I were afraid of these cattle, and as they had long horns and were ferocious-looking creatures to us city-bred girls. And as a city-bred girl, the first time I was literally standing next to a longhorn cattle, yeah, they're pretty big and intimidating. And the only reason I did was I did an interview with Roy and Judy Lyles, who had a herd, and I forget the cattle's name, but that cattle they kept because he kept all the other ones in line. And if Roy said, come on, let's go, we're going this way, it would follow, or he would follow Roy and then all the other cattle followed him. So that's why he kept them alive. And I literally got next to him, petted him, fed him the little cattle stuff. And then he was like, those ones over there, don't go near those. And I'm like, okay.
That's how I was raised too.
Yeah.
I went to friends where they were roping and branding, and they just let you know, it's like, these are the babies, these are the mamas, these are the bulls. These are who you can't touch and who you can touch.
Yep.
And as long as you're not stupid,
yep.
you'll be all right.
Yep.
As far as city girls, though, go, they must not have been Chicago city girls. Because if you were a Chicago city girl, cows wouldn't do nothing to you.
Yeah.
Considering that the stockade was half of Chicago at that time.
Yeah. So, however, they kept getting into our crops, and one day I became thoroughly aroused and got on the old blind white horse and took a little revolver we had and went after them, shooting the revolver off in the herd to drive them off our place. So she's got her garden planted. She's got to deal with rabbits and longhorn cattle.
Yeah. The cows would actually make me more mad than the rabbits.
Yeah, because the rabbits can only eat so much each day, and they're probably a little easier to get rid of than a giant cow.
They're easier to eat. And less people get mad when you shoot rabbits versus you shoot someone's cow.
True.
You get mad about that.
Needless to say, they scattered, but it gave me cold chills later to think that I might have shot myself or the old horse, as I knew so little about using firearms. So I love the fact that she's like, I'm sick of these cows, I'm just going to get a gun. And she has no idea how to even use the dang thing. It's hilarious. While we were real tenderfeet at first, we soon learned how to do work to which we had never been accustomed, and that training has come in handy many times since. I became quite proficient with a hammer, a saw, and a few nails, and have many times turned my hand to a little job of carpentering that needed to be done. And, I mean, people still do it here, like, we eventually want to pull up our carpet and put the floor back down. Mm-hmm. You need to know word of mouth who the good people are, and it's usually mom and pop folks that do it. It's not your big corporation where you go and get it done. It's the local folks that just figured out how to do stuff, and that's what they do now. And if you're, like I had my one light switch at the bottom of the stairs there. I turned it on one day and it sizzled, and I turned it back off, and luckily, I have a friend that knows how to fix that, and he fixed it real quick. Otherwise, I would have had to call around, figure out who the good electricians are and stuff. But, I mean, I probably could have figured it out myself, too. Mm-hmm. A good example is yesterday, I changed the filter on our old HVAC system in the house, and then it couldn't work. I was trying to show someone our new HVAC system. It took us 25 minutes and some YouTube videos before we realized that there's a switch. And when I take the front panel off, the switch automatically turns everything off. And that's why the HVAC system wasn't working. I had to put the panel back on. But, I won't make that mistake again. And that's kind of how everything is here. I figured things out.
Yeah.
Doing it myself. I need to replace some doorknobs later today. I'll do it myself. I don't need to call anybody. I'll just figure it out. So, did you?
Oh no, keep going.
Okay. I thought Connor was looking at last week's script,
I got stuck somewhere.
Oh, okay. So winters, as we know, were much harsher in the past, but even today, blizzards are still dangerous. We've already talked about that. Yeah. And Ida remembers one which came up without warning, and she said was forever in her memory. In addition to these two poor young men.
To the previous blizzard that was in her memory.
Ida, her brother Skip, and her sister Perm were at her dugout when it happened. The day had been fair with only a little snow, but suddenly it grew dark and the wind came up with terrible force and blew the snow and howled about my little dugout with such intensity that we dared not attempt to make the distance of 2 miles east to my father's place. There was always grave danger during the blizzard of being lost. So see, I got ahead of myself.
You did.
Talking about the lady.
And we need to get, and I don't remember if that happened in Nebraska or South Dakota, but there's a famous case of a blizzard happening in a school. 12 or 13 children and a teacher got caught up in it, and they all died.
Ugh.
And I don't remember if it was a blizzard or if it was during the Dust Bowl. I want to say it was during a blizzard, though, because I think they froze to death.
Oof.
So, it was one of those instances where the blizzard came out of nowhere, hit this school, and it was one of these country schools out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, all these kids had a couple miles to walk home in a normal day. And I think they all decided to stick together and try to get somewhere out of the school to get safe.
Oh, they should have stayed in the school.
They all froze to death, I believe. I believe that was the story. Because there's a similar story about that happening during the Dust Bowl. So I might have to get my story straight, or I might be merging the two. Because I thought a similar story happened in Oklahoma or something during the Dust Bowl. Like a group of kids, and the teacher went out and they basically got swallowed up, suffocated to death.
I've read a story and I've seen a video. I just don't remember if the two stories are connected with the Dust Bowl. And you can see the guy walking and the dust just comes up and then he's gone.
Yeah. And the Dust Bowl, it did happen up here, but to a very much lesser degree. We got barely any of it. I heard a bit of lower Nebraska got it, more of Kansas.
Yeah.
It didn't really, to my knowledge, come up our way.
Yeah, it was more like lower Kansas and Oklahoma. Yeah.
Which makes me think that it was a blizzard because I thought this school was in South Dakota or mid-Nebraska.
Okay.
So I didn't think it was a Dust Bowl.
It probably was, and it's entirely plausible as well, if you know how all that works. So Idah and her siblings are stuck here in this blizzard, and I absolutely love the rest of this story, so I'm going to read it to you. We had no provisions on hand, as I had been staying with my folks. There were some beans and fuel enough to keep us fairly comfortable. For 3 days we subsisted on beans, unsalted. Many of the 2-bar company's cattle drifted down, and among were many little calves, as it was a late storm. One little calf became stuck in a drift, not a great distance from our door, and my brother went out and brought him in. As soon as the calf became warm, he became frolicsome and ran about the room. My sister Perm and I were a bit afraid of him, so we climbed up and roosted on the table to keep out of its way. And that reminds me of a story. Probably 7-8 years ago now, I used to work with Spike Jordan at the Star Herald, and he was helping his dad up in Harrison, and they had a little calf that they didn't think was going to make it, and he made this weird concoction with Red Bull because they couldn't get out to get any proper food for the little calf. The calf made it through the night, and they were able several hours later. I think I think it was just through the night he fed the calf this concoction to keep it alive. And it was in their bathtub, and Spike climbed in the bathtub with them, and that's just what you do with your cattle. And it's a little calf, and you need to do what you need to do.
And I do get a little angry at those PETA people who are very much against the whole slaughtering of cows for meat. I understand their position, but I don't like how they call people that I know very well heartless monsters when they do stuff like that.
Yeah.
You're not a heartless monster if you're going to go out in the middle of a blizzard, out in Harrison, Nebraska, and you had to probably go find this thing out in the middle of the field, bring it back and keep it alive. And you didn't have to. It's not like if some of these calves lost, it's not like it's a huge loss for a slaughterhouse, a feedlot, because they have relatively large amount of cows, but these farmers treat every cow like it's their only cow. I mean, you have to get to know these people to realize what a rancher really is, like Scavdall and Spike Jordan and his and all the families that I know out here. I mean, they love their cows. It's not. It's more to it than just raising an animal to slaughter it. They put so much care into it. So yeah.
And I don't have the picture, but he showed me a picture on his phone of him, sitting in the tub taking care of it. And they didn't think the calf was going to live. And
there's so many stories about that. That's the problem. Even the first time that happened to Spike. I wouldn't be surprised if it was. Probably had hundreds of stories of farmers and calves going out to blizzards.
Yeah, it just happened. That was the one that I was there for. And if I remember correctly, I think the mom didn't want to take it back, but another mom took it, and the cow ended up being all good to go. She was okay.
Because
But
a lot of Harrison cows in that area, because I mean Scabdall has a feedlot, and I think there's one other feedlot out in that area. But if you're not going to bring those cows to those feedlots, you got to make sure they're all right during the winter, because these are open range cattle. I mean, the acreage that I shouldn't say open range, but the acreage that they're allowed to feed off of may as well be open range.
Yeah.
I mean, they're huge amounts of acreages. So
yeah.
yeah. So you have to go and make sure they're okay.
Yes.
Make sure that they're warm. European cows will not last our winters, ladies and gentlemen. So if anyone gets this funny idea that we need to stop eating cows, I want to know when you guys are all going to contribute to making a giant petting zoo for us, because these cows won't live without our help. Period.
Yeah. And, she did what everybody else would have done at that time. My little calf is stuck.
That was more livelihood.
Yeah.
That really was important. You lost that cow, you might have lost a couple of years down the road's worth of meat.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So Idah and her family endured many hardships in their early days here. She didn't mind. She said everyone was poor together, so no one really minded that they didn't have luxuries. And I thought that was kind of neat too, because I didn't know I was poor till I was about 10. And then my classmates reminded me until I left high school. And then when I went to college, my dorm mates reminded me that I was poor. So
it's like, thanks, guys.
I'm just glad that nobody gave a crap then. So she fondly remembers having a lot of fun, visiting neighbors and attending dances. When folks went to visit in those days, they didn't make a fashionable call. They spent the day or several days taking the whole family in lumber wagons. So I wonder if lumber wagons were how they transported the pigs.
It would have had to have been. There's no way you're going to herd a bunch of pigs to Wyoming.
In summer, they put chairs in the wagon and sat on those, and in winter, they put straw on the bottom of the wagon and covered up with warm, pieced wool comfortable. One joke that was told of a pioneer housewife who had company and wished to cover her embarrassment as she was short of silver. She called to a daughter, "Laws, Mirandy, where's all our knives?" Mirandy, failing to catch the significance of her mother's question, replied, "Why, Ma, they're all here. Big Butch, Little Butch, Case, and Stub." I don't get the joke. Other than
Sorry, I missed the drum roll there.
Other than the lady was embarrassed she didn't have enough silver jewelry, I guess, or silver for I don't know. I put that in there so that if someone else knows, they can let us know and we can explain it and we can learn something new.
Well, I would imagine where are all our knives? So basically, I'm assuming Big Butch would be something like you got a cleaver, you got a knife, a Case and Stub probably is a fork and spoon.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm guessing. I'm very much guessing, but it could be.
Yeah.
But that means I was named after a fork or a spoon. That'd be kind of weird. 'Cause my middle name's Case.
Yeah. Yeah. Ida didn't dance, but she attended anyway and found other ways to enjoy her time there. She liked the homes with board floors so people could dance, and she enjoyed listening to the folks who played music for dancing. So that's another thing you need to remember. Not everybody had wooden floors. People still very much had dirt floors at this time.
And for anyone who came to my marriage to my husband, we didn't dance. Unfortunately, he still gives me shit about it to this day. We didn't have a dance floor. Our reception was in our backyard. I was scared to death if we tried to dance there, I would break my ankle. Because the lawn wasn't even. It wasn't like a nice, even lawn. It was kind of like this, just like boarded, almost something you'd imagine in the house that's been packed down a bit, but not even. Mm-hmm. So you go too fast and too loose, you're gonna. So we didn't dance. I made it up during this last wedding because I did dance with him.
Okay.
But my buddy was smart. He rented a dance floor.
Yeah, there you go.
So, it's like I didn't even think to rent a dance floor. So.
It's all right.
It's all right.
Yeah. I'm sure Jason won't kill you in your sleep for it.
No, he still brings it up, though. Waiting for that dance. Waiting 5 years for that dance.
You'd be like, it's our 50th wedding anniversary.
Still waiting for that dance.
There were several who played for the dances. Those I remember especially were Harvey Beebe, Ed Stemler, and a fella by the name of Link Seago. That's just
don't get names like these anymore, do you?
Link Seago.
That's a good name. I don't know why I like that. Link Seago.
Yeah.
What even is that?
I don't know.
I would go up to you, like, Portuguese, Irish, German. What in the
where
hell is
does
Link Seago?
Yeah. I well remember one long ride to a dance when my escort took me in a lumber wagon which had only a plank for a seat. So when I read this last sentence, it threw me a little bit and pulled me out of the story Ida was telling, because I've never had to worry about going out and having an escort. I know there are some people today that believe that women shouldn't leave their houses without an escort, but I just leave my house when I want to.
Was that common back in the day with
I think
women?
because she was still single.
Because
she was a young single lady.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So we don't want her, having anything untoward happening to her.
What we now call a cavalier attitude.
Yeah. I leave my house. I go wherever I want. I don't need a chaperone. I know. I get it. I understand why they were doing it.
Such a thorny woman if I was like,
I would have been in trouble all the
like,
time.
Screw you.
Yeah. And I think eventually people will be like, where's Irene? I don't know. She left again. Because I would hope that I would not put up with that kind of stuff.
What about school teachers who are largely women back then? And for the largely single.
Yeah, because usually when school teachers got married, they stopped being
teachers. They stopped being
teachers.
School teachers because they started being mothers. That's not always the case.
Right.
Like I said, I am now married to a family who that was not the case. The Sears did not do that, but she still. She raised her kids and was a teacher.
Yeah.
But still, this particular woman that I've very happily gotten to know, I could not imagine her ever needing a man to walk her home.
Yeah.
She had a man in her life that she loved and respected greatly, but she always seemed like a bag of tough old nails that she didn't need one if she didn't want one.
Yeah. And I think later on in life, when it was pretty evident Ida wasn't getting married or having kids, I think that practice just kind of went away. But I think at this point in time, she was still like, maybe.
It's a very snubby attitude to be a woman who decides to be single. It's like, well, you should at least be widowed. You should have at least tried.
Well, I would say she did, and the poor boy died in a blizzard.
I guess in a way she was kind of widowed, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Not officially, but kind of. It would have been more or less the same thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And the way that she apparently felt toward him, that's probably like where it was going.
Yeah, it seems like the ring wasn't too far away.
Yeah. So mail was also a big deal. Even though her homestead was near what was the Ming post office, doesn't mean she got mail every day. Someone had to go to Kimball to get it. And I'll refrain with my own mail stories now, where when I moved here 3 years ago, my mail came between 11:30 and 12. Now I'm lucky to have it by 6:30 at night. And I'm sure everybody is nodding their head going,
Post office ain't open on the weekends no more. That was one of the big reasons I've heard that it's taken so long, because, it used to be open, I think, even on Sunday.
Well,
they're not open at all.
I used to have a regular mailman, then I had a mail lady, and then for the last year, I have no idea who's delivering my mail from day to day.
We like to call mail people nowadays.
I only said that so that you would know the first one was a dude, the second one was a lady. Oh my God. Okay. But anyway, the postal employee
postal employee. They don't. You can't use postal either. They don't like that. They don't like that word. No.
I played that video game way back in the day, like mid to late 90s. There was a game called Postal. Jeez. And it got pulled. Gee, I wonder why. And I played it, and there was no storyline to the game. That's literally what you did. And
you went into a mail office,
post office, and just went postal. Yeah. Yeah. And there was no point to the game. And the only reason I had even heard of the game was because they pulled it off the shelves. If they had just left it, the game would have died because there was no point to it.
Yeah, it's kind of like that old newspaper game for Nintendo where your whole game was to throw newspapers. I hated it.
Oh, Paperboy.
Paperboy, yeah. Because you get like chased by dogs and stuff, or run into a fire hydrant and die. But there's no point to the game. you're delivering papers for the rest of your life. Yeah. This kid has no life.
I would purposely hit people and dogs with the newspapers. Yeah. Oh gosh. So whoever went to town from the neighborhood every 2 or 3 weeks would bring the mail for the other families, and the day he returned with the mails was a big event for all of us. So first of all, that tells us only the men went and got the mail. And also, dude needs to go to Kimball from the whole area, which is just south of the Wildcat Hills. Today, that's a 30-minute car ride. But they would only go once every 2 or 3 weeks.
It's a 30-minute car ride like now since they've increased the speed limit.
Yeah.
It used to be only 60 to get all the way to Kimball.
Oh,
or
really?
65. Yeah, because they didn't have that double highway they only finished that when I graduated high school.
Okay.
So that double highway wasn't always there. It was just a single road to get out to Kimball, and you could only go 60, 65 back in the day. Yeah. When I was still a kid.
It was the double road, the 4-lane.
Now it's a double. You can go like 70, 75.
Yeah.
Get there,
or
lickety split.
Get pulled over and get ticketed doing 87. Not that I would know anything about that. And in that case, I honestly forgot because I was coming back from Cheyenne, so I was driving on the highway, and I didn't know about the back road yet. Yep. And I just spaced off and just started driving faster. And then I got a ticket. So the mail then was only every few weeks, and you got it when the dude came back. So, dude goes to get the mail. He probably has other business in Kimball, might stay a day or two. Who knows? You're not, dude ain't going down there to get the mail and coming right back. That's not happening. So Ida also noted drought years were the worst for her living here. Animals needed to be fed regardless, and they had to go to Kimball to get the food. Feed was shipped from back east somewhere, and it was your responsibility to get it from Kimball to your homestead. So no one's making deliveries up here either. Mm-hmm. She said her family never received help, but the less fortunate ones benefited from the aid barrels sent from eastern states. So this is a kind of form of welfare. I'll read to you about it. The barrels had feed and clothing, even if clothes weren't appropriate for the Great Plains. Much of the clothing was more suited to fashionable afternoon teas than it was for life in this rigorous country.
Have Timmy's old tea jacket. That'll keep you warm. And Susie's old Sunday dress.
Yeah.
Perfect.
But it was a great help anyway, and those handy at sewing made it over. Her family didn't get help because they were doing okay enough, but those that did need help could get these aid barrels, and most people knew how to sew, so they could change that tea jacket into something they could actually use. Yeah. She mentioned that everyone also canned, and it's something I'm familiar with, even though I grew up in New York State, and I always try to reiterate this whenever I talk. I didn't grow up in New York City. I grew up 90 minutes north of the city. We can.
State.
Yes.
I bet you even back in the day, the city folk canned when
probably.
They had to.
They probably did. We had a garden, and we canned everything for the winter.
Yeah, so did we. I still remember my mom's homemade tomato soup and ketchup. Some of my favorite to this day. I need to ask her to make homemade ketchup again. She used to do that for us. We'd never get the Heinz. She'd do our own ketchup, and it was so lovely.
I've never had homemade ketchup before.
It's been a while since she's made it. It's been a long time, actually.
Okay.
I might have to get on her because I know she's growing some tomatoes this year, so I'll have to ask her.
Our mother was a very capable woman and did not let anything go to waste. She had brought a great many glass jars out from Illinois with her, and in these we canned vegetables and fruits. And I totally get that because, we canned in ball jars. You ain't using the cheap glass jars. You used the good ones. And when her mother moved out here to be with her, well, her mom and dad, they were probably like, yeah, we're bringing the good canning jars. We're not leaving, and they're not cheap either, so we're not leaving those behind.
Well, and another homesteader thing that they did, because my grandparents did this, they would have the clay jars. So a lot of the things, they'd just be made I actually have one at home. It's a clay jar, and it's usually used for salt beef. So you'd stick your beef in there with your salt, your beef and your salt, and then you just have a layer of fat over it, and that capped it and kept it, and then you keep it in your root cellar.
Okay.
And that was a very, very common way to do your meats versus your fruits or your vegetables, because even though they didn't quite understand cross-contamination, they understood it enough to keep it separate.
Right.
Also, the beef did funky things to the color of the glass.
Okay.
So you keep it in a clay jar. But I have one. My grandma and grandpa's old place was actually a part of Dances with Wolves. So if you go there and see some of the screenshots, that's the shot of the old Baumgartner farm.
Oh, really?
And some of those clay jugs are back there. And when my grandparents died, they were given out to family members, including me. Like I said, I still have one. I have a little clay jar. Yeah.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, neat family history of the Baumgartners.
Now I got to go watch Dances with Wolves again.
Yeah, and suffer through Kevin Costner's horrible acting one more time. Yeah. I don't care what people say. I think he's a horrible actor. He's a horrible human being.
Oh, I didn't know that part. We'll have to get into that later sometime.
Oh, yeah, that's the Deadwood stories. Oh, he's well known up in Deadwood as being the royalist douchebag.
Oh, really?
Everyone hates him up there.
Okay.
All the locals who actually know what he tried to do to the Deadwood. Yeah, no, like, fuck off, Kevin.
Okay.
Anyway, that's another story.
Yeah.
That is another rant.
Okay.
For another time.
So there was a plentiful supply of wild fruit such as chokecherries, plums, ground cherries, and wild currants. The younger ones in the family were kept busy gathering the fruit while the older ones put it up. So that's just like my family. I had to go out and gather the black caps, and Graham would make jelly out of it. We had wild rhubarb in the backyard. I hate rhubarb, but I had to go pick it, and my grandma would put it up. She'd, do whatever she was doing to it. Usually, because there was only one really big rhubarb plant, and I think there were two smaller ones, she would just, when they were ready to be harvested, then she'd make like strawberry rhbarb pie. Sure. She didn't save any of it. It was like just enough to have a few nice pies, and that was it.
But rhubarb, you could can it. It makes excellent jam. I love rhubarb jam so much. And of course, you have to pick it at the right time, otherwise it's poisonous. So there's some skill that's involved in that one.
And I did not learn that skill, folks. It was my grandma saying, go outside and get the rhubarb.
Get it when it's red.
Yeah.
Not before or after.
And I just went and obeyed her. I did not always obey her with the black caps. I was given a bowl. Fill this first before you start eating.
Well, okay, I'll try.
Okay. I succeeded, but I still would be like, I'd put 2 little black caps in the bowl and eat one, 2, 1, 2, 1. So I was still eating them. And then as I got older, I understood the process of how you make blackberry jam and why she was always yelling at me. So we preserved plums by cooking them down with sugar and put them in stone jars. Hey, just like you were talking about.
Yes. Yep.
Except for your jars were clay, not stone.
Well, I bet she meant clay. What in the hell's a stone
probably.
jar?
And
It's
when they interviewed her, I think it was like 5 or 6 years before she passed away. So yeah.
I don't see her like getting a chunk of granite and forming a jar.
Yeah.
It's just probably clay.
Another way of preparing the plums, which were quite large ones, and I want to know where these plums are because I haven't seen any plums out here.
There are wild plums out here,
are
actually. Much more prevalent on the east side because Jason and I used to pick them a lot. But you will find groves out here of apples and plums. You just got to know where to look. Okay. But you can find them.
Another way of preparing the plums, which were quite large ones, was to scald them and then weigh them down in big stone jars. When these plums were used, all that was necessary to do was to reheat them and sweeten them, which made them taste very much like fresh plums. Jams and jellies were made of the chokecherries and currants, and much of the fruit was canned to be used as sauce. There was also wild game to be had when we first came out, prairie chickens, quail, and we often saw antelope. The antelope could be coaxed close by, putting up a stick with a red rag on it. As the country became more thickly populated, many prairie chicken, quail, and other fowl were ruthlessly slaughtered until finally laws were made to protect them.
And by the way, did you notice what she didn't say as far as animals were in there? Because they weren't there yet. Pheasants. Pheasants were brought here from China, people. They're not native. So if you ever see a pheasant around and think, oh, what a natural native bird, they're not native. They're evasive. Totally evasive because of what she just said. So what happened is during this time when they started killing the quail and the native chicken, and settlers started realizing it, they brought in pheasants from China to repopulate the area. In fact, it did the exact opposite. Because they brought the pheasants in, a lot of these animals went extinct because they outstripped their food source. So thank you to South Dakota's bird, which is the pheasant. I freaking hate it. It's not a native bird, but South Dakota's bird is the pheasant. And there's a pheasant farm just outside of Kimball. I would love to burn down. So, you pheasant people are terrible. Terrible. If you're any sort of person that likes the ecosystem or really cares about this area, first, get rid of your cats. Next, get rid of your pheasants. Get rid of them. They're not helping.
Not getting rid of my cats, but they don't leave my house, so they
Feral
aren't.
Cats, outside cats.
Yes.
I'm just saying. But your your pheasants are right after that because they kill all the native snakes, the bugs, the birds. There's so many things that have been extinct thanks to the pheasants.
Really?
Yep.
That'd be an interesting podcast episode.
Oh, I'll go off on it too.
Oh, there you go.
Let's go, China. Even though it wasn't China's fault. It was some dipshit that went to China and brought a bird back.
There were also an abundance of coyotes, and their yipping in the distance would often rend the night silence. We waged war on these animals too, and another curse then were the fleas and bedbugs. It was a constant fight, but we never regretted coming to the West. I don't know, I think the bedbugs would have got me. I don't mind.
They say bedbugs. See, it's like bedbugs have changed in terminology over time, I think, because when I was a kid, bedbugs weren't ticks.
No.
Weren't spiders, but they also weren't very common here unless you had a filthy, filthy house. But even then, what I'm pretty sure they called bed bugs were still ticks and just tiny beetles and stuff.
Okay.
Because then you go over to other countries like Africa and they look what they call a bed bug. I'm like, we don't got those kind of bugs here.
Yeah.
That's a bed bug I wouldn't want in my bed. Yeah, that's a bed bug.
Yeah, see, we need to have
are.
like an etymologist come on.
Yeah,
and talk about what they are.
Exactly are they talking about? Because ticks. I hate ticks. I found one in my bed the other day and I freaked out.
Mm-hmm. They don't have Lyme disease out here, do they?
Oh yeah, they do.
They do? Okay.
They had a kid almost die from it out in Lake Minnetonka.
Okay.
He was a few days away.
Because I'm terrified of bed bugs, not because they're like a little tiny bug. I don't care about little tiny bugs if I see them. Anyway, I'm terrified of them because where I grew up in New York, every tick carried Lyme disease. Yeah. And I grew up around people that were struggling through life because they had a bad case of it.
Well, and this kid's case was rare. So rare, in fact, and this is the only reason I remember that it was Lyme disease is because he almost died. They couldn't figure out what it was. Because it is not common here. It wasn't then. It is now because we've tested the waters. It's really our water that's carrying the disease. So Lake Minnetonka, be careful when you decide to swim. Best time to swim out in the reservoirs at Lake Minnetonka, Lake McConaughey, Bridgeport Lake, because they all still carry this disease, is now when it's raining and over flooding. Right when they start draining into the canals is when you need to start worrying because that's when the rain stopped. Everything becomes stagnant. And you get Lyme disease, you get blue algae, you get a bunch of nasty stuff. But this kid took a swim, and he had a cut. I don't even think he was a tick. I think he just had a cut on his leg. And he went swimming in Lake Minnetonka, and every symptom of Lyme disease popped up, but it was never reported here. So they didn't know what happened. Yeah, the kid almost died.
Dang.
And this happened over a decade ago, I want to say, because I think I was still in college when my mom was still a cop. She told me about this story. So, yeah.
Speaking of your mom being a cop, while I was cleaning the other day, I found a picture from when Paul was in a car accident and his car got totaled.
Was she in the background taking the report?
No, she was the officer on scene.
Oh, really?
And I took a picture of it and I texted it to her, and she's like, wow, that's a blast from the past. And I'm like, yeah, that was like 2010.
Yeah.
It was a while ago.
She could probably write a book of accidents alone in her career. She's been through so many.
She should come and tell them to me, and we can write them down.
Yeah, if she wants to. They're not necessarily memories we like to reminisce about. I mean, it's just kind of stories that come up every now and then.
Yeah. But I would love to know exactly what the bed bugs were, because I think back to, I listened to the History of English podcast, and it's super fascinating to me, and I want to go back. Even they're up into the 1600s now, and the guy's been doing it since like 2012. So maybe in my lifetime he'll get to the present time. But I remember that he talked about how that animal's a deer, that animal's a deer, that animal's a deer, that animal's a deer, because they
all look the same.
They look similar, but they may be looking at a white-tailed deer, an antelope, and an elk, but they're all deer because the language hadn't spread far enough yet. It hadn't been specialized enough. So I'm wondering if that's what went on here is...
Alexa, well, it's basically, you don't have a taxonomist coming. There's no taxonomy. There's just like, what is it? A deer?
Yeah.
That's like the joke I told to my friend at the wedding. When we were fishing, right before his wedding, he saw a snake in the water, and he made the offhand comment. And there's some other kids in a family who are next to us. He's like, wonder what kind of snake that one is. I'm like, it's a wet snake. What do you mean? And he looked at me all puzzled, like, how do you know it's a wet snake? I'm like, you know the difference, right? It's in the water. It's obviously not a dry snake. And he just gave me the biggest eye roll. Like, I can't believe I put my foot into that one. I'm like, yeah, you did. And this whole family is just giggling at him. Just can't believe it. It's like, oh, you fell for it. You did it.
Oh, gosh.
Look out for those wet snakes, guys.
Yes. After those early years, Idah went on to make a nice life for herself here. When she had completed her preemption of 5 years, she began working as a printer at various places around the area, since that was the trade she had been trained in back in Illinois. Harrisburg was called Centropolis at the time, and it was a little town full of activity. She worked for Charles Randall and Mr. Graves, who was Mrs. Ed Pattison's father. The newspaper in town was called the Centropolis World, and she also did some work there. So... I
wish they would have kept that name, Centropolis. That would have been kind of cool.
Yeah.
So just because Opolis is kind of referred to cities now, so they just got rid of the name.
Yeah.
You think of anything with the last word Opolis, and you think of a city. I don't know.
And so she worked in printing offices and newspapers, and so if I had lived back then, I probably would have ran into her and hung out with her. She also went to Denver to work in several printing offices. So even during her preemption, she could go to work in Denver because she had to be there like 1 month out of every 3, I think was the rule. So that was easy for her to do. She was able to work in Denver easily because she belonged to the typographical union and could easily shift between jobs. So it'd be like if you were, you belong to Union Steel Worker 627 and you move to Nebraska and you get a job with Steel Workers Union 628 or whatever.
The good old union days.
Yeah. One of the papers where she worked was called The Globe and was owned by Reverend Needham. Eventually, she returned to Gearing, where she worked in Enderle's store and boarded at Mrs. Enderle's home. And that's for all the older folks that know who the Enderle's are. I don't know who they are, but she made a point of mentioning them because they were nice to her. The store was located about where Praise Blacksmith Shop is now. I do not know where Praise Blacksmith Shop is. I couldn't figure.
But it was being Harrison?
I think this was up near in Gearing.
Okay, this is more near.
Yeah.
Okay.
For many years, I worked in the post office and the courier office, which were in the same building. And if you go to downtown Gearing today, the Gearing Courier sign still hangs outside of that building, even though it's not there anymore. And as of 2025, the printing machine, or printer, the machine they printed the newspapers on, is in the Legacy of the Plains Museum.
Yep.
And
That's pretty neat.
Yeah, and I got to play on it, so that's pretty cool.
And if you want to know what that post office probably looked like next to the grocery store, if it's together,
No,
if it's
next
one
to the
building,
courier
next to the courier. Well, the one in Harrison is similar. Is a courier post office, and I believe there was a grocery store, but it's all preserved. It's a museum now.
Yeah.
So if you go in there, you actually get to see how the post office used to look, which was pretty neat back then, how post offices were set up, and grocery stores.
Yeah.
But
So the building was a log building facing on Euclid Avenue, which ran east and west and was Gearing's main street. The old log building was between Crumrine's building and the frame building formerly used by the steel grocery. So she's referencing things that are there in her time that no longer exist here. But if you talk to somebody who was alive in the 40s, 50s, 60s, they probably know exactly what those buildings even looked like. We had to go to work early then, about 5 a.m., in order to get the mail off on the stages to Kimball and Alliance. The vehicles used for these stages were long spring wagons with 3 seats for passengers and a long space at the back for mail and packages. There was a canopy over top of these. They usually returned around 6:30 or 7 p.m., but in bad weather we often had to wait until 9 or 10 o'clock at night before they arrived with the mail. So if you remember, when she was still living down there in Mingo around Hull, they had to go to Alliance to get the mail. When she eventually moved into Gearing, when she's talking about getting the stages off for Kimball and Alliance at 5 a.m., they're going to Kimball or Alliance to be mailed out somewhere, and then the mail would arrive when they got back at night. And then so you're not getting your mail the same day, but they've already got a system set up because you've got the railroad in Kimball, you've got the railroad up in Alliance now. So depending where your mail is going, they're going to send it one of the two ways.
You probably go that way, drop off your mail, pick up your items, maybe spend the night, and then come back, and then the next day stay and wait for your mail, or?
Well, she said that the dudes that went usually returned around 6:30 or 7 p.m. at night.
So they basically left at the crack of dawn and came back.
Yeah, so you're doing a 12-hour day to do your mail runs. So that's a little bit different from when she first arrived, where it would take weeks. That's about 7 years after she came out here, they had finally got a little system in place where it was a little easier to do. According to an article in the Star-Herald, Ida also dabbled in real estate and took out a homestead claim in Box Butte County, Nebraska, with her brothers in the early 1900s, and she later relinquished that claim. There isn't a whole lot of info about it, other than she had it and eventually sold it.
For those who don't know, that's where Alliance is in Box Butte County, and Kimball's in Banner. Banner?
No,
it's not Banner. It's past Banner.
Same county as Sydney.
Yeah, same county. It's a big county.
What is Cheyenne County?
Cheyenne County. There you go.
There you go.
It's kind of like Bridgeport being in, I think, isn't Bridgeport in Morrill County?
Yeah.
And it's just huge. It's a huge county.
Yeah. People don't realize the huge swaths of land out here.
Not as huge as Sioux County.
That's true.
Sioux County is the
Sioux
biggest.
County is way bigger than everybody else.
Yep.
While living in Gearing, she would gather articles for both the Gearing Courier and the Scottsbluff Star-Herald in her spare time, and that was a quote from the article in the Star-Herald. I couldn't find a better definition for gather. Was she just going to the editor and saying, hey, you need to do this story on Connor, or was she actually doing the story on Connor?
Kind of like those shorthand reporters that give their little shorthand stories to the journalists that actually make them into long stories.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah. I'm not sure how involved it was, but she worked for them in her spare time, and at the very least, I guess, had a newspaper person's mind to know, hey, this is a story, this is a story. But I just wasn't able to figure that out in the time I had to get this written. Probably a little bit of both, but she might not have even gotten the credit given the times.
Like we talked about, she was a single woman with no kids.
Yeah.
So she had the time to gather this information, but was probably never respected for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's too bad.
Yeah. So I want to read from the Star Herald article again. The Methodist Church was one of her great interests in her community, and she could be found nearly every Sunday greeting the guests and handing out hymnals. She also honored all her family by taking special care of their family grave sites at the West Lawn Cemetery in Gearing. Many hours were spent in the upkeep and beautification of the final resting places of her loved ones. Memorial Day each year was a special day for her of remembering and honoring her friends and loved ones in the Gearing Cemetery. So again, because she was single, she had the time to do these things, and it didn't seem like she did them because it was an obligation. It was because it was the right thing to do, and she wanted to do it.
Although, and we talked about this before, anybody who grew up here on the plains was usually, unless you were really out here by yourself or out in the middle of nowhere, and even then you'd gather for some sort of church service. You were expected to go to church. It's not like you Easterners with the scarlet red letter or anything. You're not going to get hung or suspected of adultery if you don't go, but you're not going to be held in very high esteem.
Yeah.
You're going to be, old little Wittershins down at the valley with her crazy cats. Don't go over there, old lady Wittershins. Just stay away from her. And so if you wanted to not be shunned, just in general, you needed to go to church. Or, like I said, for these homesteaders, they'd all maybe gather at someone's house and do a service. That wouldn't surprise me. But, yeah.
Yeah. She was an ardent Republican, so at this point in time...
It's not a bad thing.
At that point in time, the parties hadn't switched. That's a long story for a different podcast.
Right. That's a New York podcast right there if you want to talk about Democrats not being Democrats.
Yeah. So she would probably be considered a Democrat today. Yeah. So she was an ardent Republican and took an active part in all political campaigns and urged others to do likewise. The yearly Oregon Trail Days celebration in Gearing, Nebraska was a special time for her, and she took delight in helping to organize it every year, and it was her special project. From the start of the Oregon Trail Days in 1921, Idah was there helping for the next 24 years.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty neat.
Yeah. She makes me feel not so bad about working different jobs because I think she was a pretty awesome woman, and she seems to have done as she pleased and worked where she wanted, but she always found work. And
she lived through 2 major wars.
Yeah, yeah. I struggle with that sometimes because I will never have a 42-year career. I had a 42-year job experiences, but they weren't all in one job, and I moved to different places. And
it's very rare that anybody has that.
Yeah, I think
my father would be one that's up there. I think he's past 2 decades at least. I think he's almost on his 3rd decade of working at Valley.
Yeah,
so you can call he had a lesser skill, but then again, Valley Ambulance is gone, so technically that's not his career anymore.
Yeah,
if you want to be really technical.
Yeah,
so.
And I think probably in 100 years, maybe 50 years, historians will look back on that time where people did spend their entire life in one job. That I think that's kind of a fluke.
They've already called that a generation long gone. I forgot what generation they called that.
They're mostly boomers, but some of my grandma's generation, I think she was silent. But anyway, it's like that 50, 60-year period where you could do that. But by the time I turned 18 in 1988, I think that was really starting to slide away.
Well, especially on that side, the environmental movement was in full swing. Coal mines were getting shut down. A lot of mining was getting shut down, and that's where a lot of the eastern careers lied. And even out here, the steel mills got bought up and closed down. They had a few other factories out here. A lot of the mining practices up in South Dakota got closed down because of environmental and native disputes.
Well, you just look at this area with Western Sugar.
Yeah, Western Sugar, which is still going, but
there's one plant.
It's not a career anymore.
Yeah.
Well, it's a
processing plant.
No, they call it a group of a cooperation.
Oh, it's a cooperative. Yeah.
A cooperative.
Yeah.
It's not a union, it's a cooperative.
Yeah.
And that has caused to me is the downfall of Western Sugars when they became a cooperative. And then the whole thing blew up, and then they put all that money on the rebuild on the farmers. So that's a good way to kill a career farmer.
Yeah,
a career sugar beeter.
So the log structure Idah mentioned was on Euclid Avenue, and in 2025, that is now N Street in Gearing, as in Nancy.
I know where N Street is. Okay, that makes sense.
So when she was working in the post office and at the Courier, she met Dr. Georgia A. Fix, and we recently did an episode on Dr. Fix. Just scroll back a few episodes and you'll find her. Idah would later recall that Georgia was an interesting woman and a true friend. And what I'm about to tell you, if you haven't listened to the Dr. Fix episodes, we didn't mention Idah too much, but they were. I have a couple of pictures of the two of them together, and they were just like, we would probably call them best friends, but they bonded, and they were just absolutely awesome friends together. Anyway, eventually they lived together. Idah had many stories about Georgia and how she seemed to admire her for her long drives into the country in winter's worst weather or through the summer heat to care for the sick. And so I think the two of them had similar temperaments. They cared for others. Because
I don't remember. Was Dr. Fix single too, or she's widowed?
Nope. She had been married and she got divorced.
Oh, she got divorced.
Yeah, because her husband was constant, like, why are you going to work? Why are you going to work?
That's right, yeah.
And
I know we mentioned it, I just didn't remember. I knew she was single, but I don't remember why.
So when Georgia's health began to fail, she moved into Idah's home, where Idah cared for her. Idah quit working to care for Georgia full time. So apparently, between the two of them, they had enough money to do this, because you still got to remember it's late 1800s, and they're two single women, and they're both able to quit their jobs. So they either managed their money very well, or they just made gobs of money and didn't have to worry about it.
I could imagine that Idah made lots of money. I mean, she had all those jobs, and where was she going to put it? She didn't have kids or a husband or anything else to do with it, so why not just store it away?
Yep, that's what I suspect happened. And with Georgia riding her horse all over the panhandle taking care of people, she didn't have time to spend it. So
no, and also didn't have kids or husbands.
Yeah,
so just saved it all.
And
good for them.
Yeah. And here's another sign that they probably had quite a bit of money. They spent winters together in California. If you go listen to those episodes, they thought that the warmer weather might help Georgia, and it did not. In 1918, Georgia was too weak to make the return trip, but Idah needed to come back to take care of some business. So they used to split their time. Kind of, sort of, maybe snowbirds, but they split their time between the two. They'd go to California. Georgia would feel better. They'd come back here, and on this last trip, Georgia was just like, I don't feel very well. I don't know if they knew the end was coming. Maybe. And Idah received word in July that her dear friend had passed away. So Dr. Georgia Fix was buried next to the McComsey family graves in the West Lawn Cemetery in Gearing. So,
which is still there today.
Yes.
It was never moved or anything.
Nope.
It's still there.
So that's also a testament to what good friends they were, that the family thought of Georgia as, extended family. Ida spent the rest of her life in western Nebraska, where she also took care of her aged parents until they passed away too. And Idah McComsey died on January 11th, 1946, age 84. Though she had enjoyed California, her family homestead near Hull was home. Of her time here, she only had fond memories. I have spent a number of years in California off and on and enjoy it there. But in looking back over the many years spent in the West, those years on the homestead near Hull are among the very best years of my life. And I don't mean to get choked up on that, but I totally get that because I came west, and my life was garbage before I came out here.
I tell people it's a good place. I guess I take it for granted because I was raised here all my life,
Yeah.
but I never really left very far from it. I never felt comfortable too far east or too far west or too far south. It really has to stay in the plains is for me to really be happy. And I understand that now. When you're a teenager, you don't understand shit. And all you want to do is get out of here, but... yeah, there's something about this place. It's weird.
And it's
explain.
And I think about it too. You and I have the conversations about this weird connection I feel with the Native American tribes out here too. I learned all about the Iroquois and the many, many, many tribes that were in New York State, particularly in the Hudson Valley where I grew up, and there was zero connection. But this place is different, and I haven't.
It is.
Ever been able to really quantify it in words.
I think a lot of part of it is that even though so much bad things happened between the tribes and the settlers here, we weren't given any chance to forget about it. Not really. We tried. Don't get me wrong, we tried, but it just never worked. You can't forget about it. Everything's here. The scars are still here. They're still plain. They're not covered up by industry. They're not covered up by civilization. Everything out here is very much the way it was before. So you can't get away from it. Not really. And I think if you realize that, you'll appreciate this land a lot more.
Yeah.
And rather than just to be in denial. It's like, no, this white Christian settlers town now and fuck everybody else. And it's never been that way here.
Yeah. And I can even go today down to Hull Cemetery. I mean, the city's gone, or the little town's gone. I think there's 1 or 2 buildings left. But I can go to the cemetery and I can look out, because the cemetery is slightly on a hill, and I can look out into the distance and I'm seeing what she saw. And I get it.
Like I said, no industry, nothing's changed the land.
I get why she liked it here, why this is where the best years of her life were. And for me, things in my life didn't turn around till I moved here. And that was, I was 37. Yeah, I had just turned, so I had just turned 37 when I moved out here.
Yeah.
And it's made all the difference in my life. It's turned my life around. I've met some really good people. I didn't really have any friends till I moved here, and now I have several. And I get it. I absolutely 100% get why this was the best years of her life. So on that little sappy end, we'll go ahead and close for today. We're like at an hour and 22 minutes. How did we get here?
Job.
Yeah.
Good job.
So if we were strict on everything, we would have split this up into 4 parts, or just read.
Wouldn't make sense to anybody if we split this up into 4 parts.
No.
You'd be halfway through one of my good stories and you'd cut off.
Yeah, I feel like, okay, Connor, shut up. No. I'm still working on a couple of things for next time. You'll just have to come back to find out what we're going to do. But for now, I'm Irene.
And I'm Connor.
And this is Storytelling on the Plains.